Hello ladies and gentlemen. So this is going to be my second video that I'm showing where I'm looking at Google Earth. And basically when I mapped the first four sets of Jupiterian stripes, and I say the first four, I don't know that there's any more. I haven't noticed any indication to suggest that there are any more. But at the time I was like, yep, Jupiterian stripes, four of them. Why? I don't think it was until I started really looking into the South China Sea impactor and what it accomplished over here that I began to consider the impact on the planet that these asteroids have. And they actually probably are asteroids, right? I just use meteors because people are more familiar with meteors. Anyway, this guy right here in the North Pacific Ocean, that one impacted the Earth, and that one was the obvious one to me for a footprint. And so I already had like connected that to Jupiterian stripes. So then by doing that, I was like, well, if there's four sets of Jupiterian stripes, then there must have been four asteroids that struck the Earth. Four impactors that struck the Earth with the capacity to set the Earth into a state of worldwide liquefaction. Here's the trick behind all of this. They will only set the Earth into a state of worldwide liquefaction if they strike the northern hemisphere. If they strike the southern hemisphere, they're already at the bottom of the bowl, so their effects on the entire planet are quite a bit less and more constrained. And that you can see down here. Alright, you see this little patch of sand blasted? Yeah, that's more like asteroid blasted bedrock. So the oceanic bedrock is visible right here because something really big went down there and cleaned the floor. So when we go down to the bottom of the seafloor with our dredgers and we start vacuuming up dirt looking for treasures and stuff like that, if we had a big enough dredger, we could clear all that sediment out of the way and expose the bedrock. And that's what you get. When you see all these surls, as I call them, subterranean radial rift lines, which look almost exactly the same as whipshock veins, basically they look that way because you're looking at the bedrock. So when you have instances such as this one here that impacted, and then you have these whipshock veins extending out from that center, it did that. It whipped the Earth in that very straight line so roughly that it just shook. It's like going out there, it's like going out in your backyard and shaking your welcome mat. You know, you go whap, all that stuff goes. It right. See, even Doodle understands. So this guy down here, if you'll notice, is pretty darn close to about the diameter of the Bermuda Rise. So if this one was up in the northern hemisphere, we would have had 5 sets of Jupiterian stripes. You see what I'm saying? But this guy here, he could only affect what was in the south. So what happens in the south stays in the south. And my bad. I'm trying to flip the planet around here. So this guy basically had an effect on the planet where the energy that was released from that impact flowed around the planet this way and created the South Sandwich Islands right here in this tsunami. And by the way, this is a lithostream that travels through here. Here's the scary thought, right? So we all know that the South China Sea impactor was the latest one, because that's the one that pretty much made a bunch of asthenospheric tsunamis pop up into the surface of the earth and basically travel over a lot of land, okay? And as I reanalyzed it, I'm like, I wasn't giving everyone the full picture, so I stopped I think I called it the Indonesian asthenospheric tsunami. I stopped it down here. But basically what it boiled down to is it was so what do you call it? What was the name of that great big lake? The Missoula Lake, right? So it was so huge and so fast, like a molten Missoula Lake, that it came down from the North Pole, whirled up into here after it filled the void, and then overflowed that void and spilled out. And as it spilled out, it came down here. As it was spilling out and coming down here, it caught this little snag on Australia and ripped that little piece of land right out of there. That's why this piece of land is kind of all messed up. All this white garbage, that's telling you something. That's telling you how basically a lot of land was reshaped from all of this flow coming down here. And it flowed down so fast that it was actually this tsunami, this asthenospheric tsunami. I'm going to continue calling it an asthenospheric tsunami. Maybe it's a lithospheric tsunami. I don't know. What I can tell you is it was liquidous. So it was liquid until it popped up and started turning into, it broke through the surface like a little chick coming out of its egg. And it came down here, and it is responsible also for creating not just Indonesia, ladies and gentlemen, but New Guinea. And down here it created Fiji, and it created New Zealand. And that's why it came down with such a great force that it actually in creating these land masses, it also created vortices. So it had its own vortex up here, rotating in this direction, as you can tell by just looking at the swirls and watching this swirl swoop down right underneath of the North Banda Basin vortical core, turning that vortical core into a pentagonal vortex, and then overflowing that up into here. So it was going here and like that, and coming around here and overflowing, spilling out down here, ripping Australia apart, coming down this way, and as it's coming down this way, it goes here and whee, and then whee, right, and then whee, starts to work right in with Antarctica. All right, so this one is also responsible for, as it turns out, it followed the Kiribati lithostream, which is either this one or this one. I think it's this one. And it came up in here and scored right there. This is the top of the Kiribati lithostream as it's going through the Americas. The Kiribati lithostream is the current lithostream sitting underneath of us right now, flowing. And when you piss it off, it starts to reshape the structure of the Earth's exterior. Okay, it's kind of like having a worm in your skin. All right, so it came over here. It severed this section of land right here, pushed this material out this way like this. This activity, as far as I'm concerned, and this semi-molten asthenospheric tsunami that popped up over here, this one was more like, it was kind of like a wave front, but it's more relative to the behavior that we see up here with the Aleutian Island asthenospheric tsunami. So the Aleutian Islands asthenospheric tsunami wasn't like this great huge frontal wave coming at you and making this curve, the curve that we see here. It actually, the greater force was coming in a circle, So it's coming down and swooped around this way, which is how you get this little curl right here. You see how all this works? Like I'm telling everyone, this isn't something that takes billions of years to do and it just curls up because that's what the Earth likes to do because it's pretty. This is stuff that was extremely violent, very quick. You could stand there and watch it happen within your lifetime. Okay, maybe within quite a bit less than your lifetime, like, a matter of weeks. Okay? Now we're coming down here, and I'm trying to, I'm confident that this right here is actually a footprint of an impactor. But you can see that it's pretty much been beat the heck up. So it's an old impactor. But it still has the primary evidence of footprint right here. And I have my first blast ring. This ring here for it is not the last blast ring. It's probably the second blast ring. Something that would have impacted that huge, it would have had a blast ring that goes way the heck out here. Because you could see, if we go over here to South China Sea, you look how small that footprint is and how huge that vortex is. Now you come over here and you think in terms of ratio and you imagine that this is just a zoomed in view of the South China Sea, then you can see how I would be expecting to be able to find a blast ring out here. The problem is, now that we're getting out to the 60-degree limit on a spherical view, you end up with global distortion, which ends up becoming the optical illusion that everything is a circle, with the exception of this. I mean, you can look at that and you can see that that's not a circle, right? You can. But what I'm saying is, in a lot of cases, you can begin to imagine circles when they're not really there. All right, now here's some stuff I'm going to tell you, and this is why I'm not sold on plate tectonics, folks, and maybe I'm an idiot, but right now it ain't working for me. So you've got these big waves right here, right? And yes, those are asthenospheric tsunamis, maybe. So I take that back. There's a possibility they aren't, because of the fact that I said that continents are like kneecaps. They're free floating, and they're slippery, and the planet beneath them is like the material between the planet itself and the continents is like synovial membranes in your knee. So when shit gets really rocky, they just start to wiggle all over the place, and then they set for a while when they get stuck. And that's when you got to go to the doctor's office. Okay, so what we're looking at here is very confusing to say the least. So I'm saying that this occurred before South China Sea hit. But when I'm looking at this blast ring here, if I flash it back, this is how I identify blast rings. I look for the circle. If I didn't already find the circle, like sometimes, take for instance the Bermuda Rise. The circle was most apparent first. No, it wasn't. The Bermuda Rise was, but maybe the circle too, because that, just a pimple in the middle of the ocean isn't really indicative of anything until you find the circle that accompanies it. So I'd probably both of those. But the thing is, that made it obvious first. But when I do draw those circles, I turn them on and off. Boop, 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 boop. And what I do is I zoom in onto that perimeter of that circle. Notice how it kind of lines up right here, right? And usually I like to find anywhere from 3 to 7 elements of lining up on that perimeter. Not to mention scores. And when I say scores, I'm actually talking about where hot material, astroclastic, whatever you want to call it, strikes the Earth and burns the Earth and then ends up burning a ring into the Earth. I like to look for those too. And it's not all completely evident here, but it's really strong right here on this particular ring. And if I could figure out where this ring is, well, it must be that one. Alright, you see Guacanayabo blast ring number 2 at 2.5 million meter radius. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, 2.5 million meters. Now, if you want to talk about something that killed the dinosaurs, if we're saying Chicxulub killed the dinosaurs, this bugger here, he probably killed a hell of a lot more. So, you notice there's kind of like this little, you see how this material right here is kind of fanning out from an epicenter? And then you have this like shape over here that's near circular. That's right. That's Chicxulub, ladies and gentlemen. It's a lot bigger than you think. Chicxulub is responsible for these ridges right here. Imagine that. So when we go around and we're saying that the Earth doesn't have any evidence of impactors anymore because they've been withered away, you better guess again, because you're wrong. A great amount of continental mass on our planet was shaped by these meteors and asteroids. So, here you go. That's the sound of someone popping their head out of their ass. You gotta start thinking with me here, you know. It goes boom, it leaves a footprint. It doesn't just disappear. And there's not enough world erosion to get rid of this evidence. And that's why plate tectonics has not got me convinced. Okay, so earlier on in my video, I said that the Bermuda rise. No, wait, it wasn't a video. It was an email I sent to someone who's responsible for this kind of stuff. I said that the Bermuda rise is the first impactor of the 4, and that the Guacanayabo impactor is the second impactor of the 4. Because it appeared to me that this, you know, the alignment of, what is that? That's Jamaica down there. The alignment of all this nice, pretty little, you know, stuff looks like it might have been there first before this guy came in and splattered a bunch of... Boomer? That's the train, Boomer. Okay. Splattered a bunch of schmuck all around over here, right? I think that's Cuba right there, ain't it? Oh my God. Alright, Cuba is a product of this impactor. Now, my guess is, this twisted stuff going on down here, that was created by the South China Sea going along, yeah, so it's right here, right? This is the Kiribati lithostream, which is the primary lithostream, which, when I say primary, it is the most equatorial, being smack right on the equator. Just like Jupiter has the central stripe smack right on the equator. That is the driving stripe. This is the Kiribati is the driving lithostream. All of the northern lithostreams and southern lithostreams are backflow lithostreams, right down to the very core. Okay, and this one is the live guy. This is the one responsible for all the other guys getting to business. That came in here and just screwed everything up. Now, when it came in here and screwed everything up, it's an asthenospheric tsunami. It's traveling beneath the surface. It's traveling across underneath the ocean floor, and it doesn't pop up due to centrifugal force until it reaches the Caribbean Sea. And then it finds a weak point, and it severs. It starts to pop up immediately following the Yucatan Peninsula, and then severs this material right here and down. Now you notice when we pull away that this lithostream is coming down here and then kind of goes up and around South America like a hub or like a wheel well, right? And it's doing that because, well, one, South America was already here when it came through. So South America was in this position, at least northern South America was in this position, at the time that the South China Sea impactor struck the planet. The South China Sea impactor is the one that agitated the lithosphere, allowing the lithostreams to score the planet with the most recent score, which are in line with our current North Pole, that little yellow dot beneath the other one. This is the yellow dot. That was where the North Pole was. The one on top, that's where the North Pole was when this guy struck the planet. I haven't even begun to really show you. Well, first of all, I'm not totally convinced these two guys here are in the right order. Maybe this guy is older than that guy. And when I say that, I'm using my cursor. So maybe the Cascadia impactor is actually the first, and the Bermuda Rise is the second. But you notice, okay, when we go down here, and I tell you how I was looking at the perimeter of these circles, Mexico was already there. There's a burn, a scorch, vitrified earth going around the perimeter following this same arc. It starts to disappear up here, okay? Now, I can tell you right now that the Appalachians came into the form that we see them as right now, looking like a teardrop, because one of these culprits activated, at least if it didn't activate all 4 or all 6 primary vortices, it activated the Sapaliwini vortex. And this is the Sapali reminder. Here's our Sapaliwini vortical core right here. It coils around like this. It goes around this way. Yep, that's the Amazon. The Amazon River isn't just a river. It's a spiral density fracture. And it comes around like this, and it goes that way and goes, whee! And so that tells us what? It tells us that the vortex is rotating counterclockwise. Well, that kind of goes over here, because right here is about the perimeter of that vortex. So right on the outside edge of that vortex, something happened, and all this continental mass started to melt and flow in the direction that vortex was carrying it beneath, okay? So when we look at the continents here, you have to consider anti-peaks. And the reason this asthenospheric tsunami was carried through here under the ocean floor all the way to here, and then as soon as it hits the northern shores of South America, it gets redirected. It's not because of the mass above the sea that we see that affected that Umleitung, if you want to call it right. It's the anti-peaks of that whole continent. So we have this huge massive ridge down here making the Andes, but underneath of that we have the anti-Andes, and the anti-Andes are what made this entire flow go around the northern shore of South America. That's how we know South America was here when that occurred. So here's the thing, right? I'm looking at the earth, and I'm trying to look at it in terms of a forensic view. And I'm trying to look for evidence of what was there when something happened and what wasn't, or what doesn't appear to be there any longer. And when I look at it, the reason I'm saying this Bermuda might actually be younger than this guy is because I can't follow the perimeter of this blast ring from this impactor on the east side. It's gone. But I can see the complete circumference of Bermuda, which is now telling me Bermuda may actually be the second world-class impactor that struck the Earth in the last 4.4 billion years before present. Now, how are we going to really know? Well, until the scientists get on the same boat with me and start thinking like I am, and stop looking at me like I'm a crackpot. You go out here and you get a core sample. Go to the frickin' pops. You get a core sample. You want to know how old these are? You get a core sample. And that's going to tell you who hit first. All right? And it's going to tell you when it happened. Now, the good thing about that is each one of these is responsible for creating or agitating planetary scores in the form of Jupiterian stripes. So, if the Guacanayabo was the first one, the Earth was rotating faster when it happened. It might have been a lot longer than 65 million years ago. Okay? So, if that's the case, if it was the first one and the Earth had 13 Jupiterian stripes, that means the Earth was rotating faster. And how do you figure that out? Well, if you're stirring eggnog and you stir it really fast and you see the little cinnamon swirls, they start getting really tight. The faster you stir it, the tighter they get. It's physics, ladies and gentlemen. It happens with planets too. You get more stripes on there, that means the planet's getting stirred a heck of a lot faster. So the rotation is faster. Makes sense, right? The less the number of stripes, the slower the rotation. So when the Earth had 13 Jupiterian stripes during the Jupiterian 13 stripe period, one Earth day was about 16 hours, a little more over 16 hours. Now, was it a 16-hour Earth day 3.3 billion years ago? Or was it a 16-hour Earth day less than 1 billion years ago? So the point is, we get the dates on these impactors. And I'm saying we're basing our age of the Earth on the latest and oldest rock discovered in Australia. Because remember, Australia is Antarctica when it was Antarctistralia. Okay? So it is as much the hot chocolate and sugar of the planet as Antarctica is. And Antarctica has always been at the South Pole. So when you get and that means it has migrated. So yeah, that's right. It hasn't always been at this particular global coordinate at the South Pole. It's always been at the South Pole, kind of like the weight at the bottom of something, right? It is the anchor, and it may have been over here somewhere at the time that Pangaea was all together at the North Pole, and then as the Earth began to balance itself out, it to help balance it, Australia broke away from over here somewhere. Actually, where did Australia? Yeah, see? So Australia was down up in here somewhere and came out and worked its way up in there. Okay, centrifugal force. Poles, equator. Poles, equator. All right? Now, when material goes from the poles to the equator and then has no place else to go, it gets kicked around and gets recycled back to the poles. This is where we get our convection from, right? It's the same type of thing. So, poles to the equator, and then it gets cycled back, around the top or whatever, right? Something like that. Inside the planet. This vortex down here is cyclonic, so it's sucking material in, all right? It's sucking material in, and the equatorial vortices are spitting material out. So, well, anyway, it's centrifugal force to put Australia up here. So Australia was here before any of this stuff came into existence. All right, when Earth had its major meltdown. I'm not even going there, because I mean, it almost looks like a footprint for an impactor right there, but see, it doesn't have quite it doesn't have the right characteristics. Why? One, because it's far too pointed right here at this bend, and if there ever was, if that wasn't pointed there and we zoomed in really close to that where it wouldn't appear pointed, then I would be saying that the pop would be right here. Now, if you have a pop here and a B2W here, a pop there with a B2W here will never have the magnitude to create a B2W wings way the heck out here like this, and then make an island in the middle of the Pacific over here at the tip of the wing. Ain't happening. So that is not a footprint. So you see how some terrain features may appear like they could be craters, but they're not. This one is your crater. Okay? Okay. Now, you see this weird ass shit going on down here? This isn't for kids, so you can listen to me. Alright? Ladies and gentlemen, that's spray. You see that? That's spray coming out of there. Huh? What does that? Well, here, let me tell you. On my first analysis and my own, and without going into it further, I haven't really spent a lot of time on this, but just by looking at it, that kind of looks like a ricochet furrow. Only it's going from this direction, hit the earth here, and goes out the other side. That's another story. We haven't gotten it. We're worried about what makes the earth go, what makes the earth start moving beneath your feet. Okay? And that's the scary stuff that we need to be able to mitigate rather quickly. Because you know what? We're about due. So, like I was saying, get the core samples on these guys, figure out when they occurred, and we can figure out how quickly the planet decelerated from the Jupiterian 13-stripe period to the present Jupiterian 9-stripe period. That's right. So at the time that the Earth had 13 Jupiterian stripes, Jupiter will have also had 13 Jupiterian stripes. That's why they're called Jupiterian, right? Okay, so, and the Sun would have had 13 zones of speed. I don't know what else to call them, because NASA's looking at them and saying, well, it's going like 10 miles an hour here, and then you get up to this level and that level down here, and then it's like 8 miles an hour, and then it decelerates as you go toward the poles, and it's just like really going fast in the middle, but they're all going the same way. But there's like only 9 rivers. Yeah, I can tell you right now though, the solar North Pole and the solar South Pole are rotating in the opposite direction. Okay, back to my doggons here. All right, now I was trying to figure these guys out, right? I may go back on my word and decide that Kakanayabo is actually, I can finally say it. I mean, gosh, it took me so long to finally get my tongue twisted around that stuff. That might be number 1, folks. It struck the Earth during the 11 or 13 stripe period, and then the 11 stripe period would have been Bermuda. Now the cool thing is, if you look at the size of this B2W and pop, it's really close to the size of the North Pacific Oceanic B2W and pop. So, because I'm able to find the first blast ring here, which, by the way, if I zoom in on it, if that blast ring is cutting through the Yucatan Peninsula, that would indicate that the Yucatan Peninsula, obviously, was there when this happened. And And if that's the case, then the Yucatan Peninsula was at least in part formed by well, that only makes sense. Something exploding that creates this huge of a footprint blast bow wave, it's bound to have some kind of a major effect on the surrounding land, right? I got to figure out where I am here. Am I down here? There I am. That's the inner one. There it goes. So I need to get in closer. See if I find anybody that lines up. That's just a straight line there, so that doesn't mean nothing. Now, if you notice, there's kind of like a very faint line right there. Oh yeah, go ahead. Say, well, if you're looking at her hard enough and you're really looking for, you're going to find what you're looking at. Get the hell out of here. I don't always find what I'm looking for. So don't give me that crap. All right, so I turn it on or I turn it off. All right, so it strikes right here, and we're going to follow this featured area right here and see if we have anything that lines up with it. And again, when we're looking for stuff that lines up with stuff, we're looking for evidence like island configurations in these areas and scorch marks that give us a pretty good idea. Now, we're not likely to see scorch marks on that guy. Not in the ocean. They usually don't have that big of an effect on the ocean floor. Why? Well, because the ocean floor is, one, if it did have that effect on the ocean floor initially, the sediment moved in and covered it up, or two, it never reached the floor because it's too far down and it was protected by the ocean. So then we look right here on this one. Now, I don't know if you can see this or not, but you've got this faint line going right on that guy right there. That's the kind of stuff I'm looking for. Those are the scorch marks that I'm looking for. And of course, they're not scorched now, so many billions of years later, but the score itself is still there. And in some cases, those scores, ladies and gentlemen, happen to be frickin' they actually happen to be terrain features. And along some of these things, you may also find volcanism. Volcanism generally occurs not so much along blast rings as it does scores created by lithostreams and vortices. All right, so that's that one, right? So we're going to go over here to the Yucatan Peninsula and blip them on, blip them off. And you notice if you're looking at it while I'm blipping and blapping, blipping on, blipping off, blipping on. You looking at it with me? Well, I've missed my little square. You see, I hate to say it, but I ain't finding anything. However, when I look over here, you see over here I am finding something. So, you see how this tangent starts to come up through these little zits right here and around there, and that helps me align the arc. That's one, right? So I'm continuing to mark my arc, and now I have it showing up over here. And you look right here when I take the line away. You see that? I have a line, an alignment. And you see right here? It's a terrain feature right up in here. That's 3 points matching my arc. You tracking me now? When we got these two great big, I don't know, Everglade potholes right there in Florida, and then you have this green, and here's the thing, folks. The Earth still gives away its secrets. Why? Because the vegetation changes in these burn areas. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know if the vegetation is deader in these areas or livelier in these areas, right? Now, you might even go as far as to say that maybe this impactor was responsible for, in part, if not in whole, for setting the conditions of life as we know it in this particular area here, right? Where you get all them nice pretty little critters floating in the water, right? So, all this stuff down here is new. This occurred after this guy marked his territory. But all this over here, so Florida was here already when this guy struck the planet. You see what I'm saying? Yucatan wasn't. Florida was, Yucatan wasn't. Florida was, Yucatan wasn't. But you see how it kind of flowed down here all funny like this? Now, if we were to look at this as a frontal wave of a asthenospheric tsunami, which this is more likely to have been an asthenospheric tsunami than it is to have been a continent rotating and lifting up over the ocean floor, because there's no continent here. So it didn't have the mass it would need to build this kind of a ridge. So it does have the mass that could have been moved underneath the surface of the earth until it surfaced and created this tsunami, right? And then we get this gobbledygook right here that's kind of hard to understand. But we don't really know where this came from per se. So if the Bermuda Rise impactor occurred after this guy hit the planet, it could possibly be that the Yucatan Peninsula here and this mess here actually did not exist until Bermuda struck the planet. And then when Bermuda struck the planet, it had some kind of, because it's a world-class impactor, right? And it's in the northern hemisphere, and it agitated, if that's the case, and I'm right, it agitated the lithosphere so that it created, the lithosphere created Jupiterian striped scores in the surface of our planet. And that being the case, then it would have had the potential of creating asthenospheric tsunamis that could have come down here from this location, or released enough energy in a following location that it came down here. So now if I go up here and to my, I know this is really starting to drag on, but if I go up here to my primary vortices and I turn on the Sipaliwini vortex, here's the Sipaliwini vortex. See how the Appalachians are, bam, right on the perimeter of that guy. That's not just coincidence, ladies and gentlemen. When you have a freaking circle that's right on the border of something like the Appalachian Mountains giving you that shape, and it happens to be rotating in that direction, and then you have a neighboring vortex over here, the Pacific Oceanic vortex, that just happens to damn near perfectly align with the frickin' San Andreas Fault. Come on now. That's not something that somebody as dumb as I can make up. That's geometry telling you a story of our planet. Our planet has secrets, and we got to be open to understand what those secrets are before we can sit there and call ourselves scientists, right? We don't know jack. And if we can't figure out that the planet is gyroscopic, we know even less than jack. Jack done got the gal and ran away. All right. So, now you can see, because of the way the vortex rotates in Sipaliwini, that this most likely was an asthenospheric tsunami flowing in the direction of that vertical rotation, and probably was activated by this guy right here, in which case, if it was flowing in this way before emerging and basically, now the Yucatan might have actually been continental mass, but up farther into here someplace before it became liquefied and, so to speak, melted down here into this, and merged in with what came out through here, right? Now, this material here, these guys did not exist. We probably would have had the leg, this wing of the Guacanayabo impactor going down into here still, very, very clearly. Then the Dominican Islands would not have existed at all. And then over here, this would have been created, and this would have melted down, slipped down from here, moved down into here, because you see that little wave, just like the Appalachians up here, that little wave form. It's following. It could not penetrate the ridge created by this impactor, so it flowed around it. And if that's the case, then something's not adding up. Because this ridge here, if this ridge here was created by this impactor here on Chicxulub, then that means Chicxulub could not have been related to this guy at all. Because I was suggesting that this guy here basically was such a huge explosion that the column of mass went up into the thermosphere and then turned around, and all those astroclastic and pyroclastic rocks, because it would have been mixed, start falling back into the earth, traveling back through the Earth's atmosphere, and coming down as direct hits. That's a great theory, and it probably did happen. But if that's the case, then this ridge would not be here. There's just no way this ridge would be here in the perfect form that it is around this evidence here. This happened after Yucatan already melted down into here. You see what I'm saying? So, kudos to the Chicxulub guys. Their impactor, this one probably was 65 million years ago, and this one was probably like 3 point some odd billion years ago, right? What does that tell you? That tells you that the North American continent has not been moving around the planet like a cloud. Impossible. It's not really moved a great deal at all. It's moved, just not a great deal at all. And when you think about continental virga, where the continents are spiraling down toward the South Pole, because the South Pole is the bottom of the planet. Remember, it's not the bottom of the planet because, and I'm holding my hand like toward the floor because the floor is usually considered the bottom. It's not the bottom of the planet because we set our globes like that on and we look at the Earth like that. It's the bottom of the planet because that's where the gravitational, galactic gravity is striking the planet, pulling it down to the bottom. You see what I'm saying? Because in space, the bottom of the planet isn't down here, ladies and gentlemen. It's over here. From your point of view, it's over here. And the top of the planet's over here. Remember? I told you it's a flying football. All right? That's how the planet works. The galactic gravity strikes the base of the planet, thrusts it forward into the pressure given by the bow wave here, forces the entire solar system into a disk. Now we know how we get the disks, right? Right. Same thing with the galaxy. It's a disk because it has the universal jet stream, bam, right up underneath, and it's conical. Believe it or not, our galaxy is conical. Conical means cone-like, right? So it's shaped more like an upside-down plate. And that's because the greatest force is the driving force of, here's the galaxy, my left hand's a galaxy. The driving, from your point of view, I think of it like this because I'm right-handed. So if you're right-handed and you're looking at me, you're probably thinking like this. Here's the galaxy, and it's conical. You see how my hand is shaped like I'm holding a ball. And the universal jet stream is going up here and slamming it and pushing it into the friction excuse me, the friction in front of it, squishing it into a disc. Hello. Cool stuff. Gee, is there anything I forgot to mention? I don't know. The next thing I talk about, maybe not right now in this video, but I have to go in here and I will tell you how large this impactor was when it struck the Earth. Because, one, I have the B2W. I have my three basic elements. The B2W, the pop, the point of penetration, which is that little bump right there. And, yeah, I know, I almost said that, but I refrained, okay. And three, the first blast ring. As long as you have those three elements, ladies and gentlemen, you can not predict, it's not happening in the future, you can determine the basic size of that particular impactor based on the scientific conclusion that the meteor crater impactor was 40 meters in diameter. Capiche? Yeah, that's what I thought. Alright, and then I'm going to take this and put it into Google. Now, you see down here, I go up here to the top of my giggity gagget. And this is my setting that I love to look at the most. About 10,381.67 miles above the Earth's surface. That's how I like to look at Earth. So I'm going to go right here. I'm going to put this into PowerPoint. I'm going to measure that. And then I'm going to take that same measurement, click and drag, and drop it over here so that I can get a ratio comparison of this guy with this guy. So when I'm able to look at this one and determine the size of this impactor, I can go over here to this one and make a calculated determination of what its size would have been as well. And the only reason I don't do that with this is because this impactor's B2W was almost a low-angle impactor from a high angle. And as you can see, we're looking at the more typical near 45-degree spread on that impactor, and the more typical, well, this one's actually probably a little bit broader than 45 degrees. However, when it initially impacted, it might not have been quite such a broad spread, mostly because of the lithostream coming up in here and just tearing everything up and screwing everything up for trying to figure it out later. You see what I'm saying? So I'm going to change what I said. I'm going to go back on my word. I told the government that I don't think they're listening to me. I think they're just like, they're having a good laugh. But because, you know, how could a guy that makes boxes possibly know that the North Pole migrated? How could I possibly tell you where it was? How could I possibly see stripes on the planet that nobody else sees? How could I know that there's impact craters all over the planet just like the moon when nobody else can find them? Because I'm a crazy old guy and, you know, what can I say? Some people just can't see, they just can't see the image. You know, to say it in a politically correct way, because my comparison to how I learned how to look for things that are very elusive, say for instance in one of those paintings that was made by a relative that was an abstract? Not abstract, what the heck is it called? Well, it's one of those crazy squiggly paintings, and you're supposed to look at it and be like, that's Uncle George walking the dog. It's like, okay, whatever. Actually, I was right when I figured out what it was at the age of like 10. Okay, naked lady sitting on a log. So if you can't find a naked lady sitting on a log, I can't expect you to find these impact craters. That's what it boils down to. Yeah. I don't know which relative that was. Yeah, it's just some long lost cousin. It was probably his cousin they painted a picture of sitting on a log. She was actually sitting on a stump, believe it or not, not a log. And the color is red, white. Well, kind of like an off red, somewhat more like a faint red, you know, a sun bleached red, white. I think the guy was smoking pot or something. I don't know. He might have been on, because this was back in the *60s or something, or maybe even the *50s. You know, so this guy, you don't know what he was playing with. It might have been just shrooms. I don't know. Well, anyway, it wasn't LSD because they didn't have LSD yet. All right. Well, what am I thinking here? Well, you see how I'm thinking when I'm looking for my stripes and stuff, right? Yeah, that's how it works. So, those are the world-class impactors. What makes them world-class, ladies and gentlemen? That's right. If they have the capacity to create lithostream scores such as these around the planet, they're world-class. World-class impactors are only world-class if they strike the northern hemisphere. Why? Because material falls. That falls to the southern hemisphere. If it's already in the southern hemisphere, it has no place to fall. The tsunamis will never go northward. Never go northward. All right, we clear on that? All right, thanks for listening. Now, all right, let's see. I'm going to have to blow my nose. Excuse me. So, we got a lot of crazy stuff that went on up here now. And we could talk about this stuff here. Now, I was saying that South China Sea here was responsible not only for all these tsunamis up here, which it totally was responsible for the tsunamis, but I was blaming it to be responsible for the North Pole slip. Excuse me. Well, it might have been responsible because it was responsible for this tsunami and these tsunamis. It totally could have been responsible for creating the ghost of Chukotka here, where this is Chukotka now, and Alaska that point of Alaska would have been met up here, and so these two, this guy Alaska was up in here, and well, Russia, like landing gear up here too, right? Russia was up into here, and Alaska was sitting right up in here, a lot tighter, and so it would have been responsible for those, but it wasn't responsible necessarily for the pivot of Greenland from here, the spread of North America down here, creating the icebergish-looking breaking apart of Nunavut, and things of that nature, right? It wasn't responsible for those necessarily, and the reason I'm saying that is because that would have been all of North America. Well, no, I might take that back. It might have been responsible for the pivot of Greenland and the spread up here, just like it was responsible, because it was responsible for the tsunamis breaking away from this stretch of Arctic fracture, and all that energy came down through here, right, and basically fanned out from there and down here, creating the Hudson Bay, whatnot, and coming down here. So as it came down here and did all this crazy stuff here, yeah, it might actually have been responsible for that. However, North America, basically all it did is it compressed North America into what we see today. It was, so you might even say that as Greenland was up here, this might have been, all this stuff might have been up in here, more spread out, right? And thinner as it would have been, but spread out and connected like one solid landmass, Pangaea, right? This is the other part of, so this would have been like Gondwana land or something after Pangaea. The two large continents from Pangaea separated, right? But in a sense, they weren't separated from Pangaea yet, because Chukotka would have been up here, Alaska would have been here, Greenland up here, and that could mean that these guys over here were up in here closer, and so Pangaea may still have been Pangaea to a great extent. The only thing is that this being the first impactor, and the scores being visible here on the east, and the scores being visible here in Mexico, means that if this was the first impactor, ladies and gentlemen, Mexico was already there. So Mexico could have already been there. Or it could just be, excuse me, it could just be that I'm wrong, and though the South China Sea impactor is responsible for a lot that happened over here, it might not necessarily be responsible for what happened over on this side of the planet. So, and it could just be it could just be that each time a northern hemisphere impactor strikes with the capacity and the ultimate result of becoming a world-class impactor, these guys over here actually affected this side of the hemisphere. And naturally, this big fracture here is like the epicenter of all big fractures, apparently, or big events. And maybe this occurred first. So like, because you see how this is overlapping right here, right? And this is overlapping here. It could be that the Aleutian Island tsunami was not a product of this impactor, but a product of one of these impactors. And then this impactor later affected the slippage and release of the Chukotka Peninsula coming down here, pivoting down here, creating this pivotal mountain range right here as it slipped down on an arc, leaving a ghost, right? Except that its relationship with the terrain over here in Alaska gives the impression this was simultaneous. Like here's Chukotka, here's Alaska, and then they both pivoted down to here where the 2 points meet. That's the case. These occurred at the same time. Regardless of who triggered them, they occurred at the same time. If that occurred at the same time, then I'm going to go back to suggesting these guys occurred at the same time. When I say these guys, I'm talking about the asthenospheric tsunami that came down through Hudson, creating this great big bay, coming down here, swooping in, creating the Cascades and Rocky Mountains and such. Maybe not in whole, but at least in part. And all this stuff breaking around up here and being moved down and basically creating these ridges here as this pivoted that way, you see? So you have this angle and this angle. So they're feeding like this. Whoop. Right? If they would have made a full circle, this guy would have come around down here, this one would have come around down here, and they would have created a suture right in the middle. So, excuse me, it's kind of hard to tell exactly who happened first. That's why it'd be really interesting, scientists, if somebody with the money goes out there and gets a core sample. Get your core samples. Get your core samples here. Step right up. Get your core samples. That's darn freaking sinuses anyway. Don't you hate that? You can't talk for 1 hour without your doggone nose filling up with all kinds of stuff. Alright. Anywho, that's what I'm trying to say. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close off this video. and maybe start working on some more details for this guy over here, so we can get the size of that impactor out to everybody. All right, bye. Bye for now, anyway. Oops, wrong button. Oh no, oh no! How do I turn it off? Oh my God, what am I doing? Ah, why did they have to put those buttons so close to each other? I can't. It won't shut off. Oh no! Okay, I'm just gonna close. Can I close the program? It won't let me close the program! Oh, I don't know how to do this. Studio mode? Settings? Exit. It's still recording. Oh, this is perfect. Well, my live clock isn't going anywhere. How do you shut this off? Sorry, folks. We'll figure this out. I think. I mean, I might have to do Control Alt Delete to turn this thing off. None of these buttons is working. How do you like my English? Is working. Okay, settings. Exit. Exit's giving me a bleepity bleep. Oh, this is fantastic. So it's going to take me another hour to figure out how to shirt this thing off. Exit. Maybe if I push escape on my keyboard. Woohoo! It's still recording, but it stopped the other thing. Stupid computers. All right. Stop. Okay, bye. Bye now. Hey, don't forget to like and subscribe, because even though I'm boring, I have a lot of good news to put out there. Okay, bye.